Good morning. So, I have a very busy day today for many reasons. But the most important thing that I really need to do today is deal with this client meeting. But that's not the most stressful thing. The most stressful thing that I'm dealing with today is I need to make a really big, important decision, and I can't make my mind up. But we're going to talk about that in a bit. First, my studio is a little bit of a mess because I've been working on a few projects, so I need to get this tidied up so I can get prepped for my meeting, have my meeting, and then we can talk about this decision, dilemma, this problem that I'm having. So I just wrapped all that cleaning up. Looks a lot better in here, I would say. And now I'm just gonna get prepped for this meeting. A few things I wanna have. I wanna have a spreadsheet with kind of basic ideas of what things might cost and kind of things that they might need, services, plugins, etc. I wanna get an idea of some font packages and some colors that I might use. So I'm gonna put together basically a few little documents that are just gonna be kind of an aesthetic idea of what the site could look like. That's important to have because a lot of clients have no idea what they want, and just having that information ready will make the meeting go a lot smoother. So I'm going to go ahead, sit down, crank that out, and get to it. Turn off the overhead lights. Yeah. Well, I think kind of a good place to start, where are the places that we want to direct kind of concept, but I guess the idea. Hey Google, please turn on the lights. So that whole thing was really just a tangent, right? That's not the thing that I've been stressing about. The thing I've been stressing about is a big deal. It's really a first world problem. It's not a big deal. Let me explain this thing. So the thing is, I don't really have a work computer. I have this gaming PC that I built, which is dual purpose. It serves as my work computer. It's also a hackintosh. So when I built it, I didn't build it necessarily for the best gaming performance or whatever. I built it for compatibility to then turn into a hackintosh. I was gonna make a whole video about how I built a hackintosh. I didn't end up doing it because I procrastinate and I'm anxious, whatever. But the problem with having a hackintosh is it can be very, very unstable. So in this case, for the work that I've been doing, especially when I've been working in After Effects, recently in Final Cut, it's unusable, like crashes all the time. My most recent problem in Final Cut was not one that I ever expected to have, which is that when you're using an external hard drive, the external hard drive just randomly disconnects, which means that the drive that your footage is on suddenly isn't there, which means Final Cut can't figure out what the heck to do, so it just closes. So that's been happening to me. In fact, it happened to me in the middle of editing a project recently, which was very annoying. But what's the point of all this, right? The point of all this is that I need a new computer. This computer is pretty out of date. It's a pretty old i7 processor. It's a GTX 1080, which is actually pretty good for video editing, but the problem there is that it's not compatible with the most recent version of Mac OS, which means I can't update my operating system. So I'm not getting security patches, I'm not getting the most recent version of Final Cut, which means I'm losing out on certain features. It's problematic. And I want to fix this problem by getting a new computer. And I've always wanted to have like the top of the line computer, you know, that thing where you go and you just select the maximum options all the way down the list. You know, when you're trying to build a computer and you're like, wow, what would it be like to have this $50,000+ computer? I wonder. So I've always wanted that. So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna get a Mac Pro. Not maxed out, of course. I'm gonna spend under $10,000 on it. But so I'm going through I'm trying to figure out, you know, how the heck I'm gonna do this. And well, let me show you something. So I created this monstrosity. A lot of colors, a lot of numbers, kind of confusing to look at. Am I right? It's a lot. And the thing is, it's a spreadsheet. I know, powers of deduction, above average. But I created this because I wanted to get an idea of what kind of value I'm getting for these different computers. Because I was so set that I was going to get a Mac Pro. And then I saw this video that told me that I think it was like Max Yuriev or someone was talking about how they got a Mac Pro and really they use the MacBook Pro more because they don't really notice the difference. It's like such overkill. So I was like, okay, I want to figure out what is actually like a better value, right? There's no way a MacBook is going to be a better value than a tower, right? Having to cram all that stuff into that little shell, thermal performance, all that stuff, it's going to bring it way down, right? Okay, so let's look at what I did here. I took OpenCL single core and multi-core scores from Geekbench. That basically checks to see how the GPU is going to do in things like video editing, how the CPU is going to do in simpler, straightforward tasks, single core, and more complicated tasks like video editing, multi-core. I took those numbers and I created something called a KScore, which is a completely made up thing that I made up, and I couldn't come up with a more unique name than Kyle's score, so it's KScore. And what the KScore does is it weighs those things in a way that I thought was logical. So I thought that these numbers don't really make sense, right? 70,000 for OpenCL, 20,000 for multi-core, 1,000 for single core. These numbers don't really make that much sense if you just add them together. So what I did is the K-score is the OpenCL score divided by 7.5 plus the single score times 3.5 plus the multi-core score, and then the whole thing is divided by 10, and that gives me the K-score, which is a more reasonable number to work with, and it means that the multi-core score is about double the importance of the graphics card score, because I think that CPU is a little bit more important than the graphics in video editing and stuff. I'm not exactly sure how Final Cut works these days, but that's kind of how it tended to be in the past. And single core score is like a quarter or a fifth the importance of multi-core score. Video editing stuff is going to be multi-core, multi-threaded, I hope. So that gives me these K-scores. And then I took the price and I divided it by the K-score to give me dollars per score, which means that's the number that you are paying, in this case, $2.19 per K-score. So that is the value, right? That's how much money you have to pay per performance. So, in theory, if I sort dollars per score from low to high, that should tell me, in theory, the best value. And it's an iMac. I really don't want an iMac. Look at this fantastic setup, right? I have two monitors, it's fantastic. I have a 4K monitor that I've used for video editing and photo editing and all that great stuff. I have a 1080p monitor, which I use for gaming. I'd like to upgrade it, but it is what it is. But I'd have to give up one of them or both of them if I were to get an iMac. And that's so problematic. Okay. Maybe the value isn't the most important thing, right? The most important thing is that I get a computer that does what I need it to. If an iMac isn't going to do what I need, that's fine. Maybe if I just look at the scores, I'll get a better idea here. All right, so let's sort K-score by high to low, which will give us the highest performance at the top, lowest performance at the bottom, and sort, and... All right, let me tell you why I'm a little flabbergasted here. If you take a look at this computer right here, which is the computer which I was thinking about buying, the Mac Pro, I was like set on buying this computer. It's an 8-core Xeon with a 5700X GPU, and its K-score is 1,723, which is, I guess, a decent number. I don't know what these numbers even mean. But the problem is that the cheapest iMac I'm considering beats it out by, 53 points? That's it, that's a difference of $3,200 for it to be worse. What the heck? And if you look at this, the base Mac Pro gets beat out by the MacBook Pro with the 5600M. Both i9s. The higher clock speed and the lower clock speed. You're paying, in these cases, for the Max Mac Pro versus... Sorry, the Max MacBook Pro versus this base Mac Pro, you are paying... essentially, what is this, $2,000 more to get 60 fewer points in K-score. That's awful. It's just, you can't justify buying a Mac Pro unless you need an insane amount of performance. If you need a 28-core Xeon, obviously there's no other options if you're going to run Mac OS. So it looks like I have to get a MacBook Pro or an iMac. I'm not going to get a MacBook Pro because if I'm considering this Mac... right, if I'm looking at this computer, there's no way I'm going to go below that, right? So spending less money to get more performance, this is the computer that seems to make sense. And, the dollars per score, the value is in the green. That's really good value. But let me explain why I don't want to buy an iMac. This right here, 27-inch iMac. This is a much older iMac. This one's dead. It's not what I'd be getting, but I'm going to use it to illustrate a point. We start off by looking at the front. Massive chin, pretty big bezels. That's annoying, right? New monitors, the bezels are so much smaller. I don't know why Apple hasn't been able to fix this recently, but the new iMac, the front looks basically the same. It's thinner, it's more powerful, screen's better, but basic ideas are still the same. What really starts to know, you can really start to notice the problems with this when you look at the back. I mean, that's where my problems with the iMac lay. Despite the fact that it takes the place of one of my monitors. It's a really good screen, so I'm okay with that. But my problems are back here. This is where all the air comes out. All the air goes in through the vents on the bottom, but it all comes out this little area on the top. So that means you're forcing air through a very small hole. That means it's going to be loud. It's going to make a lot of noise. With something like the Mac Pro, you have a lot more airflow, which means the fans don't have to work as hard, which means less noise. And when you have high-powered components that generate a lot of heat, I'm not sure if the iMac's will be able to keep as quiet as I would like. That's a problem. The mount here, not actually a problem. You can get the iMac with a vase mount, which means I can attach it straight to one of my stands. Easy peasy. But the biggest problem is right here. The I/O. This isn't the exact I/O that's on the newer computers. In fact, Ethernet's the same. These two, what are these, DisplayPort? DisplayPort ports would be replaced by Thunderbolt 3. There's no FireWire. And then these 4 USB ports are still there. We get speaker, headphone, microphone combo jack, and then there's an SD card reader, which has moved from the side on this device to the back on the newer ones. That's not a lot of ports. If you're looking at a Mac Pro, you get 2 USB 3.0s on the back. You get 2 Thunderbolt in that same little slot. You get 2 Thunderbolt on the top of the computer. You get 4 Thunderbolt in the graphics cards that I was looking at, and you get 1 HDMI 2.1 also on that graphics card. So you get a lot of ports. You also get 2 Ethernet ports. It's way more I/O than I actually need. I wouldn't fill all those ports, I don't think. Here, I'm gonna fill all these ports and need more. So one of my Thunderbolt ports can be for my monitor, my second monitor. I would have to get rid of one of these. The other Thunderbolt port is probably gonna go to a dock, so I can split it out to USB stuff, because I have a lot of USB devices that I need to connect here. We're talking keyboard, mouse, card reader, drawing tablet, audio device, external hard drive, printer, HDMI capture card, webcam. There's a lot of devices here. There's a lot of things that have to get connected to this computer, and there isn't a whole lot of I/O here. And all of those cables have to get routed back here. This arm right here has to have all of those cables inside of it. Because as you can see right here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 cables. 4 cables running through here. There's not a lot of room. This is actually a pretty tight fit as it is. So all these cables are going to be just multiplied. There's going to be so many cables back there, which is going to be a mess. But unfortunately, I don't think any of that matters. We looked at the spreadsheet. We saw the numbers. The performance doesn't lie. If I get a MacBook Pro, that's even fewer ports than one of these. If I get an iMac Pro, similar situation. You have a few more ports, but you still have the cable routing issues. And if I get a Mac Pro, I'm just not going to get the performance I want. There is no perfect solution here. And I guess that's kind of the message I have to learn here. I mean, there isn't going to be a perfect solution. I want there to be one correct answer, but I don't think there is. But I do think that one of these, a 27-inch iMac, it's going to be the way I'm going to have to go.